All right, just put that aside for just a moment. Turn to Zechariah. Zechariah chapter number 5 is where we are this evening. Hopefully you read ahead. Got some idea of what we're looking at. Zechariah chapter number 5. It's only 11 verses, but like all the minor prophets, not always the easiest. So, and again, we're not doing a deep dive into like every individual word. We're trying to grasp the overall message of it, and getting the main theme out of it as we go through one chapter at a time. In a brief, it really is a brief study through the minor prophets. Zechariah chapter number 5, verse number 1 says, "Then I turned and lifted up mine eyes and looked, and behold, a flying roll. And he said unto me, What seest thou? And I answered, I see a flying roll. The length thereof is 20 cubits, and the breadth thereof 10 cubits. Then said he unto me, This is the curse that goeth forth over the face of the whole earth. For every one that stealeth shall be cut off as on this side according to it. And every one that sweareth shall be cut off as on that side according to it. I will bring it forth, saith the Lord of hosts, and it shall enter into the house of the thief, and into the house of him that sweareth falsely by my name. And it shall remain in the midst of his house, and shall consume it with the timber thereof and the stones thereof. Then the angel that talked with me went forth and said unto me, Lift up now thine eyes, and see what it is that goeth forth. And I said, What is it? And he said, This is an ephah that goeth forth. He said, Moreover, this is their resemblance through all the earth. And behold, there was lifted up a talent of lead, and this is a woman that sitteth in the midst of the ephah. And he said, This is wickedness. And he cast it into the midst of the ephah, and he cast the weight of lead upon the mouth thereof. Then lifted I up mine eyes, and looked, and behold, there came out 2 women, and the wind was in their wings, for they had wings like the wings of a stork, and they lifted up the ephah between the earth and the heaven. Then said I to the angel that talked with me, Whither do these bear the ephah? And he said unto me, To build it an house in the land of Shinar, and it shall be established and set there upon her own base. It's good, isn't it? These are, I mean, they are tricky, and I understand that you guys probably haven't spent a few hours researching and studying and reading and listening and things like that. But reading over it, maybe in the past or now, is there any gleanings out of it? Just maybe surface level, some is sort of.
Yes. Very surface level, yeah. But in verse 2, it looks like they saw UFOs back in their day as well.
Yes. We might say to him in the morning, I think you had like 8 pizza late at night or something. You see some of these visions are like, what is going on? But it's a big roll. There's a restaurant in Branson, Missouri. It's called Lambert's. It's home of the throwed rolls. And they come out of the kitchen with bread rolls, and you put your hand up and they throw. And there's literally bread rolls being thrown around the restaurant, and you're catching bread rolls. It's called Home of the Throwed Rolls. So they can be flying rolls. That's not what this is seeing. He's not seeing bread rolls flying through the air. They're not spring rolls either. It's a big spring roll though. Yeah, I think Manuela could pull off a spring roll that size. She's very capable. But no, the roll, the scroll that he sees, and it's 20 cubits by 10 cubits. That's about 9.5 or 9 meters by 4.5 meters sort of height. It's a big thing that he is seeing in this vision. I think our building is 12 meters wide, 14 or 12, can't remember. But yeah, but either way, like it's a good portion of this room wide and high. So he sees this big, gigantic scroll is what he sees. And it's written on both sides. You see that in verse number 2 or verse number 3. For everyone that stealeth shall be cut off as on this side according to it, and everyone that sweareth shall be cut off as on that side according to it. So it's written on both sides. And there's two chief main sins that are presented before them. One is thieving, stealing, being a thief, and the other is lying and swearing falsely by the name of God. They're the two chief sins that are written upon this scroll that have come to judge the people, which tells us that the tone of this vision is different to the ones previous. The ones previous were encouraging. It was like God putting his arm around Zechariah and around Joshua and around the work and around what's taking place and saying, I'll bless this. Don't listen to the naysayers. Just you keep going and doing my work. And there's a lot of encouragement there. This has a tone of sin to it again. There's some judgment that is here, and wickedness is mentioned specifically. Any other observations?
Just the women as well.
Are you making observation, or are you just noticing that there's women flying through the air with stork wings?
Yeah, I don't know. I suppose like we you know, it's common understanding, I suppose, that you know, the world always has like female angels, but like when you read the Bible, it's like it's male angels, you know. And any of the sort of servants of God that you see, it's generally like a sort of a male figure. But that's the interesting one, where it's actually a woman. But I don't know, is it talked about? I have to be careful how I say this, but is it talked about in a bad way?
I think it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's funny how it does that in Revelation as well.
Yes.
Where it talks about like, you know, the whore like that sits on 7 hills, and it's almost like it's when it's like a group of people sometimes or whatever it's talking about.
No, I think you're going right down the pathway that I'm going to be going on in just a few moments. Down that line. Yeah. Any other thoughts or observations out of? Don't scratch your heads, folks. It's like an auction. Ben goes straight away to his head. Any thoughts? No, that's it. That's as deep as we can go in this chapter. Let's have a look at it. Let's just break it down and look what's the components of it, and then we'll try and do the best we can in what short time we have to hopefully give some understanding about maybe what's going on here. One, the flying roll. That's there's two main things in this chapter. One is the flying roll. The other is the basket with the ephah in it. An ephah is a dry measure, a dry weight. We'll come to that. So you have a flying roll. On this roll it's like the law of God is written. On one side it talks about those that are liars, and he sees this lying big law that sort of comes over him, and I think if it's 10 meters, 9 meters by 4.5 meters, and it comes over him, it would overshadow him and probably cast a shadow. And maybe that's the imagery that is being presented here, that the law that they are living under, the law of God, and it's over there, and God is saying, I see what you're doing, and my judgment is upon you. But he says that the judgment that he sees, the curse that is on them, and not just this, he says in verse 3, then said he, this is the curse that goeth forth over the face of the whole earth. So whatever is taking place, he's not just singling out what's taking place here in the city of Jerusalem. This is across the entire earth. So this judgment, this law, this wickedness is across the whole earth. For everyone that stealeth shall be cut off on this side according to it, and everyone that sweareth shall be cut off on that side of it. And it will bring it forth, saith the Lord of hosts, and it shall enter into the house of the thief, and into the house of him that sweareth falsely by my name, and it shall remain in the midst of his house. It means this is not a passing judgment. This judgment is going to come and stay. It's going to like take up residence. And you think, oh, this is going to pass on and we'll just go through this. No, he says, no, this one is going to come and stay. This one's going to be judgment upon you, and it shall consume it with the timber thereof and the stones thereof. It means the whole entire house is going to be brought under judgment for their lying and for their stealing. And he goes on into verse number 5. When the angel talked with me, went forth and said unto me, lift up thine eyes, and see what is before thee. And he says, what is it? And he said, it is an ephah that goeth forth. Now an ephah is a biblical measurement. It's a dry weight. So they would measure the corn and the wheat with an ephah. An ephah, if I check my notes, will tell us that it's about a bushel, which is 60 pounds or maybe 16 kilos worth of grain that would be stored in an ephah, and homers and things like that, omers that they use for measurements, but an ephah is here. And so you have this ephah, sort of like this basket, this ephah of grain, and he says this is an ephah, and it goeth forth. And again, he said, moreover, this is their resemblance through all the earth. So what he is depicting is happening all the earth over. Both the law, that's judgment that is kind of holding over them, being liars and stealers, but also this particular ephah and what is being represented here. And he beheld, and there was lifted up a talent of lead, and this is a woman, that sitteth in the midst of the ephah. And he said, this is wickedness. And he cast it into the midst of the ephah, and he cast the weight of lead upon the mouth thereof. When it comes to measurements, oftentimes you would have a weight, right? So how they would do the measurements, they would have a weight, and they would put that on one side of the scale, and then you'd fill up, right? You'd fill up the basket, or you fill up until you get to the weighted measure, and you get the right weight, right? Now, twice in Proverbs, it's said that God hates, it's an abomination to him to have an unjust weight, right? So this is what you do. You'd say, right, this weight is an ephah, but actually it weighs less than an ephah. And so when you're weighing up the grain and it weighs up, you're actually getting less than what is being said that you're getting, right? And this has been going on for thousands and thousands of years. And guess what? It goes on today as well in business, that people will say one thing and deliver something else for the sake of getting a profit out of it. Money is what it is. Money is what they're after. And so God says, this is wickedness. If you were to go read the book of Jeremiah, which we did a couple of years ago now, but one of the things that is up there with idolatry, as in God hates idolatry and all the idols that came in that brought the judgment, one of the things that is right up there is not looking after the fatherless, the widows, and the strangers, is actually abusing them and taking advantage of the poor for their own material gain. God says, I will judge the princes, because they are not looking after the poor of the land. This is what I delight in. I delight in that you understand and that you know me. I delight in you looking after the strangers, the widows, and the fatherless, which are in the law. They're meant to be looked after. But they were taking advantage of them. And God hates people taking advantage of the poor. He still hates it today. And there are some things... there was a man in the US that, if you remember Brad Bacon, he was from his church in the US, and he owned, this particular gentleman owned what they call a pawn shop, what we call a hock shop. What do we call it over here? Second-hand store, cash converters, that sort of type of business. He owned a pawn shop, and I didn't think anything of it. But the first time I'd ever thought about it, pawn as in P-A-W-N. All right, I got real confused when I went to America as well. A what shop? Yeah, it's not a word we use over here. But hock shop is probably more of an Australian word. And Brad said to me, he said, oh yeah, I don't like that business. I don't think a Christian should be in that business. And I was like, oh really? I never thought about it before. And he says, yeah, because basically you are taking people who are down and out, and they are either they're in debt or they are just they've got bills piling up and have no money, and so they take stuff that they have, right, and they go to these pawn shops, to the hock shop, and they're saying, man, what would you give me for this item? And so they use that item as collateral. They're basically, it's what the Bible would say is giving a cloak. Like you give the coat as the collateral in those cases. The Bible says you're meant to give the coat back to them at nighttime unless they be cold, right? But they take that, and then they put it onto this massive amount of interest that if you don't pay back, then you get all this interest. And if you can't pay back, then we take the item, and then they end up lending money against that item, right? Be it I say VCR, that's sort of showing my age. They're probably not doing VCRs anymore, but they're doing PlayStation 5s, and they're doing TVs, and they're doing whatever else, wedding rings and all this sort of stuff. And they'll give them pennies on the dollar, cents on the dollar for it, and then they can't pay it back. They keep the item, and then they sell it for a higher price. Right? That's the business model. You have other like payday loans. You have Cash Train. You have Oren was working at Cash Train when he was over there, and he just got a job and he was working in the call center. He says, "Man, this is an awful business." He says, I am, when they call up, they are wanting like a pay advance and they want money. He says, so we get access to their bank accounts. And he said, I have to go through to see what they're earning and we give them money. He says, but it's at stupid amounts of 22%. And it's like on a day or a week, or it's a ridiculous amount of money. And so they're doing these cash to people who are vulnerable. Right, so wealthy people are getting wealthy off the poor. God hates that. He really does. He said he removed Israel out of the land because they abused the poor. And so he is saying here, he goes, you're abusing this idea of getting rich. You are willing to do it through unjust means, through abominable means. People will act and live to get money. And guess what? People still live the same way. They are still being dishonest and lying and stealing to get money. And it corrupts everything. And he says, this is the ephah that they're after, but it's an unjust ephah. And he says, I see it, and this is wickedness. And it's depicted as a woman. The wickedness is depicted as a woman, which I think is the reason for this. If you follow temptation through the Bible, it's depicted as a woman, right? All the way for the strange woman in Proverbs, the strange woman is a seductress to the young man. And he is saying, right, choose wisdom. Wisdom will do you good all the days of your life. But he says, my son, and wisdom is presented as a woman, right? As a life companion for this young man that Solomon is saying. Choose wisdom. She will do you good all the days of your life. But he is saying, but be wary, because there is also this strange woman, and her lips drop as honey, and she will tempt you and entice you and promise you the world, but in her is the steps to hell. And you will find that at the end of her is your liver will be struck through with a dart, is what he said. So he says, warning, be careful, as much as she's beautiful and enticing. And so temptation is presented as a temptress. And this temptress, this strange woman, she commits adultery, wipes her mouth, and acts like nothing's happened. That's how Solomon presents her. He says, son, stay away from her. You will get burnt and you will have injuries and hurt to your cause for going down that path. But temptation is presented as a woman, a temptress, and an idolatrous woman, which is what it is, that people will literally sell their body and they will sell their morals for money. That's what prostitution is. It's someone selling their body for money. And there are plenty of examples of that in our world today, and all the different offerings in which different ways that people are making money, and young women are making money, selling themselves online for exorbitant amounts of money that they're making. And it's all splashed across the newspapers, and it's in the article saying, look at this quote-unquote influencer is making X amount of money per month because she's on this particular thing doing these stuff. Right. That's prostitution. Yeah. It's selling morals and your body for money. Right. So you have this woman here but depicted that they're saying, we are prepared, we are prostituting the truth, and we are selling the truth and selling our morals for money. We want money. God says, I see it. You're liars and thieves is what you are, prepared to do it. And this woman is a depiction of it, and it's wickedness. And this is wickedness. And he cast in the midst of the ephah, and he cast the weight of lead upon the mouth thereof. And then lifted I up mine eyes, and looked, and behold, there came out two women, and the wind was in their wings, for they had wings like the wings of a stork, and they lifted up their ephah between the heaven and the earth. Now, again, Cole made mention of angels in this, but these aren't angels. This is a vision that he's having. As much as that first woman is not an angel, she's an image and a picture and a representation of the message being conveyed. Then you have also two other women, and with wings of storks. Now, if you go to Leviticus, storks are unclean animals. Everything about this image is unclean. It's wickedness. It's storks. it's lying and stealing. And he says, these two women go off, and look where they go. And they lifted up the ephah between the earth and the heaven. And then said I to the angel that talked with me, whither do these bear the ephah? And he said unto me, to build it an house in the land of Shinar. Pop quiz, what's in Shinar? Babylon. Babel is built in the plain of Shinar. It's where Babylon is, right? So they go and build this house there. It's like they're building this to build it in house. What are they building in house? It's like in Shinar, in Babylon, they are building a house to the honor of the false ephah. It's like worshipping unjust gain. It's worshipping the things of this world, I think is what is being conveyed here. And he says, this resemblance is all throughout the earth. He says, I'm not just dealing with Jerusalem here. He says, this is the world over that this takes place. Now in the land of Shinar, and it shall be established and set there upon her own base. And God is saying, I'm going to bring judgment upon this lying, stealing people who care nothing but for their own material gain. And do you think that the CEOs in our world are the most honest people that ever lived? Are they the most honest people? No, they're as corrupt as anybody else. And sometimes they're more corrupt. And the things that they're trying to do to work the system to get more money into their coffers. Ross was saying on the way to the city on Monday night, he was watching a documentary about the pharmaceutical companies, right? We're talking billions and billions and hundreds of billions of dollars, that probably even more than that come in through pharmaceuticals around the world, right? You have, and he said this particular documentary was saying that you have the name brand pharmaceutical companies, but he says then you have all these off-brand pharmaceutical companies, and they are selling the same product, but he says that, he said in the documentary they were saying basically the off-brand in these particular ones were like getting just past the legal limit to be able to say, yeah, this is a knockoff of this particular brand. He says, but he says a lot of times it was just basically equivalent to a placebo, is what they were saying, is what they were selling. But they were selling it as a product, as a, this is going to work like this. And he says, and as the documentary went through, whatever the documentary was, he says these knockoff companies were owned by the big pharmaceutical companies, the same ones. And they're making second-hand stuff like unto the other product, but not really the same. Well, why are they doing that? Because there's money in it, and they can make a bigger profit margin there, because these are basically placebos that people are buying, and they're making more money. That's dishonest, is what that is. And as much as the world might not know it, someone has to do some investigation into it to uncover it, guess who does see it? God sees it. He says, man, the whole thing is corrupt. The whole finances are corrupt. Man is stealing and man is lying to gain money in these powerhouses that are there. And so who are the most influential people in our world? They're not the big merchants. Those who have the most money and the billionaires, they have influence in this world. And God is saying, I see it though. I see it. And I see all the unjust, the inequality in the monies. And the land of Shinar is Babel and Babylon, and they establish a house and they set it up upon her own base as if they're worshipping the things of this world and the money. Well, in Revelation, wouldn't have time because it's a Wednesday night, but guess what Revelation, what was it, 17, 18, 16, 17, 18 deal with, whatever it is?
Babylon will be destroyed.
This mystery Babylon is going to be destroyed. And the merchants are going to weep. God is saying, right, I see your complete corrupt financial practices. And I am going to flick the house of cards, and it's going to come down, and the merchants are going to weep. If you're going to follow through, we don't have time in chapter number 6, but it talks about the red horse and the black horse and the white horse and the grizzled and bay horse. Where does your mind go with that? If you're just talking about 4 coloured horses. Revelation. It goes to Revelation, doesn't it? It goes to Revelation. If you go down in this, and we don't have it, but if you chapter number 6, and you go down to verse number 12, after the horses, And it says in verse number 12 of chapter 6, and spake unto him, saying, Thus speaketh the Lord of hosts, saying, Behold the man whose name is the branch. Who do you think that's talking about?
Jesus.
Amen.
Jesus. So it's like God is saying, right, this Babylon, this whole economic system built upon lies and dishonesty and swearing falsely by my name. So it's like these two women, the commentator or the preacher that I was listening to today said that those two women represented one, the economic mystery Babylon, and one, the religious mystery Babylon, which are both presented. While the religious mystery Babylon is presented as a whore. She prostitutes herself. Why? She is selling truth and selling integrity for power and position and for the applause of men, for the things of this world. They are selling truth. They are selling morals to gain the things of this world. Right? That's what the religion of our world has done. And all false religions trace their origin back to Babel. And here it is, here we are today. So he's saying, I'm going to judge this once and for all. And then he goes into those four horses, which sort of casts our mind forward to Revelation. And then he is going to bring judgment upon it all. And the merchants are going to weep. When God brings down this house of cards, that's never going to be rebuilt by these men who built it. It's going to completely collapse, and they're going to be just realize their dollar is worth nothing, their portfolios are worth nothing, and it's all the things of this earth is going to mean nothing to them. It's going to mean everything to them. It's going to value zero, which is what the things of this earth really are. It's the true worth of it all. Just nothingness. It's just dust is what it's going to turn to. And he says it's going to come to. But after those horses, after the judgment of God, it's Jesus enters the picture, which is exactly how Revelation plays out. At the end of the judgment of chapter 17 of Mystery Babylon, or chapter 18, was it chapter 17 or 18? One of those chapters. After Mystery Babylon is judged, you know who comes on the scene directly after that? Riding a white horse. Jesus comes on the scene. So there's judgment coming, and I think these things point onwards to God's judgment upon the earth and upon the unjustness that is in this world. And so don't worry about what's taking place. God knows and God sees, and God has a plan to work things out. And don't concern yourself too much about the economic fragility, is that a word? Frailty, instability of our world and the world economics, because God looks after you, and God will look after me. He feeds the ravens and he feeds the lilies, and you are of more value than them. So don't think that your worth is tied up in your amount, your net profit, and whatever your portfolio might be at this current moment. Don't worry about that. Just know that God will take care of you, and God has a plan and he's working things out. We'll leave off there. Read chapter number 6. I think 5 and 6 sort of go together and dovetail together. We'll, like I said, read chapter number 6, and we'll have a look at that next week. And might look at Revelation as well.